Welcome back to my mental health and crime channel. My name is Huda London. This is the case of the Idaho quadruple murders. This was an article written by the airmail Harvard Bloom. The Eyes of a Killer. Baffled by the gruesome murders of 4 University of Idaho students, investigators put out a call for help. Thousands of tips poured in, as well as one very promising lead. This is when Brian Koberger was arrested, I believe January last year. He starts the article by, suppose you wanted to kill someone. That would be easy. There are lots of ways. But suppose you wanted to kill 4 people, all in the same house, all within moments of one another, and you choose to use a knife. That could help eliminate the noise, but it would require skill, strength, and endurance. Murder is hard work, especially if people fight back. Then there's the real big obstacle. You want to get away with it. You're determined to stab 4 people living in single home in the still of the night and then disappear without leaving a clue to your identity. Now that's a more difficult challenge. But you did it. You have everybody stumped. It's a perfect crime. That's the real life mystery. I just have to get my glasses. You can read the rest yourself, guys. This is just what Harvard Bloom wrote in his article, but the main material is coming. So the article starts from here. That's the real life mystery that had shrouded the pretty northern Idaho college town of Moscow, pronounced not like the Russian capital but to rhyme with Costco. The locals, with no attempt at irony, quickly reprimanded newcomers. It had been a football Saturday, mid-November, the last home game of the 2022 season for the University of Idaho Vandals. The Gibby Dome Park packed with more than 7,600 fans, and despite the disappointing loss, Saturday night was still party night for a college celebrated in knowledgeable polls as the best party school in the state. The stately row of wet frats, as they're known on the U of Idaho campus, twisting along Nez Perce Drive, that is the address of the Sigma Chi, was crowded with the brothers and the dates, high-spirited assembles fueled by blaring music, prospects of mischief, and rivers of alcohol. The Hellenic Council for Reasons. Strangely enough, didn't they say it was a quiet night? There was nothing quiet about this night. Let's continue. Then you have the last 2 lines, the corner club and all. So basically, students were partying. It was the Vandals' last season. So on the 12th, going to the 13th of November, 2022, was a busy night. And then, in the heavy quiet of the new Sunday morning, 4 young corpses, all students, all friends, were found hacked to death in their beds in a pale clapboard house, little more than a stone's thrown away from the heart of the university's campus. There was so much blood. Trigger warning. Sorry, I should have said that earlier. It had seeped through the wooden floors and run down the building's grey concrete foundation in jagged red rivulets. It wouldn't be until nearly 7 tense weeks later, when an early morning raid by a police SWAT team, thousands of miles away from the scene of the crime, finally arrested a suspect. Brian Koberger, 28-year-old doctoral candidate in the Criminal Justice and Criminology Department of Washington State University, was pulled from his parents' home in the rural Pocono Mountains of Pennsylvania and charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of felony burglary. So he's facing the capital murders. The capital murder, we know that. Yet even with the arrest, mysterious remains. Neither reasons nor motives have been revealed that will explain the horror that ended 4 lives. May they rest in peace. And in the unhealed aftermaths, there remain on armory of fears. 25,000 people in a one seemingly, I don't have my glasses, guys, sorry, bucolic town nestled in the rolling snow overswept Idaho hills, still alert with suspicious neighbors, seared by the mystery of 4 perplexing, I'm sure deaths. Later, when it became necessary to fix blame for internal confusion over the gravity of the situations, fingers in the Moscow Police Department pointed to the dispatcher, but the truth is the dispatcher was simply following procedures. All the town's 911 calls are routinely routed to Pullman, about 10 miles west of Washington State and home to Washington State University. Whoever did these horrific crimes definitely knew that the calls go to Pullman. They must have done all their research, whether it was Brian Christopher Koberg or someone else. So they're explaining how their methods, how their procedure works. I'll let you read it since I can't find my glasses. So the call was made, it was 11:58 a.m. on Sunday. Okay, let me start from the beginning. And things only gets worse on football weekends. Therefore, when the callers are agitated, rather than risk injuries, delays by probing for details, the responders swiftly assign a generic explanation. Unconscious person is one of the standard catchphrases. It can mean precisely what it says, or it can be shorthand for something more ominous. It was 11:58 a.m. on Sunday. November 13, 2022, when the notifications of an unconscious person at a residence on 1122 Kings Road, Moscow, was passed on to Sergeant Shane Gunderson. Gunderson, who on the day was midway through a 12-hour shift that had started at 6 a.m., was running the operation division at the sparkling modernistic it had opened barely 11 months earlier, Southview Avenue Police Headquarters. I'm sure that's the one in Pullman. So it was opened only 11 months. There you have Officer Gunderson. You can read this page. I think it's more about the Officer Gunderson. You can read this one too. So from here is when it gets interesting. When the 911 call came in, Gunderson had a corporal and 2 other officers on duty to assist with patrol. He could have left the response to them. He tell people with a hint of embarrassment, had no intimation of something out of the ordinary. That morning, he was simply eager to break the monotony, and as always he felt strongly it was important for him to get on the street where the people could see him. He swiftly decided he'd go to the scene too with his officers. So this is Officer Gunderson. So this is when he went. It was a quick trip. The roads leading into the university neighborhood that Sunday were as empty as classrooms. And as soon as Gunderson's black and white cruiser pulled up behind the neat row of cars parked in the driveway of the Austri cantilevered house on King Road, he immediately knew something was very wrong. Did he just feel that negative vibe in the air? Is it the aura? It was a noise. There wasn't any. It's like they say, it's not what you say, it's what you don't say. Sometimes the silence is disturbing itself. There wasn't any, just an eerie, unnatural silence. A cluster of young people, university students presumably, were milling outside the open front door of 1122 Kings like gulls on a beach, and yet they were exceptionally quiet. They were merely subdued. They seemed stunned, as if drained by a deep and intense shock, when the 3 mystified officers approached the front door. Someone in the crowd, it will later be shared, muttered a single word. He said, someone muttered a single planetive word, dead. So now let's take a break, and I hope you all understood most of it. You can go back and read this email article. What I find interesting so far is that many students were summoned up, that there many friends that we know of. We've heard that. The Sigma Chi fraternity boys were called by Dylan and Bethany. We know that. I heard one of the girls went out hysterically yelling and crying, and the other one, I think she fell unconscious or something. But while all that was going on, people from outside obviously were shocked and did not know what was going on. So I heard 2 to 3 people went upstairs to check on the second. I know everyone was on the second floor. They went and they checked upstairs on the 3rd floor, and found Maddie and Keely. So you can imagine how many people were walking inside and outside this house. People are actually standing outside, and they muttered the word dead. Think about that. All these students were quiet. Listen to the sentence. It was the noise. There wasn't any noise. Imagine that. It was eerie, unnatural silence. A cluster of young people, university students, presumably, were milling outside the open front door of 1122 like gulls on a beach. Everyone became silent, but everyone knew exactly what happened. The police were called 8 hours later. That's not a joke. Imagine what you can do in 8 minutes. Then imagine what you can do in 2 hours even. Now imagine what you can do in 5 hours. 8 hours is a normal working day shift. 8 hours, 9 hours, 8.5 hours. Did these two girls, BF and DM, feel safe to be in a house where 4 young lives were horrifically taken? This doesn't make sense. Trigger warning. Still, Officer Gunderson would confess to others he was unprepared for the strong smell of blood that rose up in his nostrils the moment he walked inside. The coroner, who had once been an emergency room nurse in an early stage of her life. The coroner is very flexible. She's an emergency room nurse. She's a lawyer. She's the coroner. And she got promoted for 4 more years. Earlier stage of her life would describe the scene in press interviews as chaos, lots of blood. That's what the coroner said. As for Officer Gunderson, he would confess to others he was unprepared for the strong smell of blood that rose up in the nostrils the moment he walked inside. We heard from Fox TV, from Fox Channel, the news, from the reporter when he was standing behind in the parking place. He said, "Martha, this crime was so brutal, there was blood on the walls. We know that it was targeted and it was isolated crime. That's the reason I believe that there are more people involved." Or maybe that Brian Christopher Kohlberger is not the person who did it. There are moments cops who tell you that are too profound, too unnerving to be experienced in the present. All you can do is move forward. There will be time later to try to make sense of it all. Procedure takes precedence. It allows a protective membranes to be stretched between the real and the too real. All other thoughts, all other feelings become extraneous. The strange thing is it's been a year and couple of months, 2 months, I believe, and we're still in the same position. This case is like the Twilight Zone. Keep on just going round and round. The people knew. They said dead when Officer Gunderson came there. Imagine. Xana's sister was informed. She called her father and he had to drive back. We heard that on 48 Hours. There was so much blood it had seeped through the wooden floors and run down the building's grey concrete foundation in jagged. So this is what Gunderson witnessed when he came to the scene. Allegedly. According to the airmail and Howard Bloom, the eyes of a killer. And so Gunderson and his 2 officers, largely mute, almost robotic in the movements now, stepped carefully across the blood-streaked wooden floor. So there was blood on the floor, literally. So this was... I don't believe one person could have done all this. It's not like he came in. Trigger warning, sorry guys. If this is too heavy for y'all, you can come back later. But think about this. Unless you are trained assassin or trained killer. Unless you have so much rage in you. I don't understand. How could one person... That means the person had to be an expert in using the K-bar knives. I personally believe that means the person is a criminal before or has done things, whether he hasn't got caught. I believe there were many people involved. Occupants. That was what the police used to say in the start. Occupants in the white car. Where's the 3 unidentified male DNAs? Everything has to come into scrutiny. Because this doesn't make sense. So going back to the article, and so Gunderson and his 2 officers, largely mute, almost robotic in their movements, now step carefully across the blood-streaked wooden floor and proceed to inspect a crime scene. Wedged against a hill, the house rose up on the distinct levels from a platform base like an ancient Persian ziggurat. The officers set out to inspect each floor. They moved cautiously, not knowing what they'd find. Yet, of course, but now they knew. The first floor, nevertheless, was a surprise. There were 2 bedrooms. When they anxiously entered each one, there was no signs of anything out of the ordinary. I'm sure that's where Dylan and BF was hiding themselves, allegedly. Later, they would learn that the 2 university student occupants, Dylan Mortensen and Bethany Funk, had apparently slept obviously throughout the carnage. It was explanation that made no sense. There you go. I don't think it'll ever make sense. 8 hours shock. To be in a frozen state for 8 hours and you're 2 people. They were allegedly texting each other. Things are coming out slowly by slowly. You could see that the sergeant and especially the sheriff wouldn't call them witnesses. He said they were just there. When did they become witness? Because if Dylan was a witness, they would have said that from the start. This doesn't make sense. So now they've checked the first room. They found nothing out of the ordinary. However, as the staggering day wore on, Mortensen would reveal more about what had happened that night. She told the authorities she heard crying, opened the bedroom door and saw a man in black clothes and a mask walking past her. Frozen and in shock, she stood immobile as he headed towards a sliding glass door at the back of the house. And then, inexplicable, she returned to her room and locked her door to the morning. My question is, didn't Dylan need to use the toilet? Because she did not have a bathroom, a toilet in a bedroom. So what was she doing? You locked your door, you're in shock for 8 hours. Aren't you concerned more of the killer coming back? Aren't you worried about what happened to your other roommates and the dog? This doesn't make sense. And then we had the Latin footprint that was found in front of Dylan's room. What is Dylan hiding? What does she see? What did Bethany see more like? Because Brian Christopher Koberg wants Bethany Funk to allegedly talk. He says she can exonerate him. He keeps on using this word from the beginning, that he will be exonerated. Was Brian working for someone? Was Brian working with someone? Allegedly. Was Brian framed? Allegedly. What happened? Because we know that Brian's car pinged there, but we can't be certain that Brian physically got out of his car, parked his car, that we can see it's Brian Christopher Kohlberger who walked into the sliding door, the window, wherever, did this horrific crimes. We have to literally picture as a jury the weapon in his hand, that he's done all this, and then he walks out without any remorse, any regret, or any empathy. But where's the evidence? Just because his car pinged there 12 times before, he could know somebody in the area. I believe these crimes, like the police said, was targeted, isolated. The mayor said crime of passion. There's something with all of that. I believe these students were targeted by the fraternities and the sororities. Didn't Kaylee go to a sorority party on the 12th, I believe? I heard Dylan called Kaylee and told her to come back. Kaylee came back to show her new car, possibly. But I think this was a trap. Something was going on from the start. So she locked her door. Funk and Mortison got up at 11 a.m. and they decided to rouse the roommates and call friends. They summoned people up to the house so that they could play around with the evidence. They had 8 hours, allegedly, to clean up. That's what I believe. Why would it take 2 people 8 hours to call the police? Doesn't make sense. They thought there was a party upstairs. So this is when Gunderson comes to the scene. 911 is called because an unconscious person message was relayed to Gunderson. The trio of officers, meanwhile, proceeded with haste of the second floor. Opened the bedroom door to find 2 dead bodies, a male and a female. The pair was gruesomely drenched in blood. Trigger warning. Yet both their good-looking faces had oddly been preserved like masks. May God bless their souls. The pair were gruesomely drenched in blood, yet both their good-looking faces had oddly been preserved like masks. Even at the probing moment, it was difficult of the young officer who nearly wailed to look at the 20-year-old pair, Xana Kernodle, a grave, sad-eyed beauty who was a Pi Pater Phi, and a happy-go-lucky, tossly-haired Sigma Chi boyfriend, Ethan Chapin, a triplet from Conway, Idaho, whose surviving brother and sister also attended the university and not considered the glow of the once rich promise that had been so viciously extinguished at her high school graduation, Post Falls, Idaho. Xana had confidentially written on a motor board, "For the lives I will change." Poor Xana, I love that saying. For the lives I will change. I'm sure Xana has changed lives. So has the other 3 victims. They become part of people's thoughts. A lot of people pray for them. May God bless them and their families. And then there was Kaylee and Maddie. May they rest in peace. On the 3rd floor, things got, it possibly was, in one bedroom. Sorry guys, one bedroom, lying in the single bed, were 2 Inuit women, Madison Morgan and Kaylee Congalvis. They might have been sisters, so similar were the 21-year-old pretty Barbie doll-like sculpture features. The long, cascades of thick-streaked blonde hair falling down to their narrow shoulders. Yet in death, there were one gruesome differences. Kaylee, it would be reported, had been hacked with a particular ferocity. It was as if her wild assailant, or it was assailants, had been intent on gouging out chunks of her flesh. Large punctures were how the lacerations have been described. Poor Kaylee. Maddie's wounds, while no less fatal, appeared less feral, more measured, at least in comparison. So Kaylee got it the worst. Does that make Kaylee the victim? But it started with Maddie. Does that make Maddie the victim? We're not even sure. I personally believe it started with the couple from the Sigma Chi. So many people have been upstairs to Maddie and Kaylee's rooms when Dylan and Bethany were going hysterical downstairs and the Sigma Chi boys and all were there. Many people were summoned out and many people from outside were standing outside saying dead. Imagine how many people his DNAs is around that house. That is, I believe, one of the reasons that they demolished the house. So the only person that survived besides the surviving roommates is Kaylee's dog, Murphy. I personally believe Kaylee was sleeping in her room and she heard something happening to Maddie. So she came running inside. That's one of the reasons she got a burst. She could have... I don't understand. There's so many ways to look at this horrific murders, but I personally believe that Brian Christopher Kohberger is not the only person who did it. I've always said that. He could be involved or he could be innocent. That is up to the jury to make their decisions, but I'm sure there's going to be reasonable doubts. All they have is the IgG. They don't have any blood evidence. There's no connections between Brian Kohberger and the 4 victims. No DNA of the victims was found in his car, his office, and his house. That says a lot, according to his defense attorney.
Anything from the community to help put together that timeline. We obtained a copy of Twitch video, and family members of the Gonsalves family were able to identify Maddie and Kaylee in those videos at a food truck ordering food. Is the police department, our investigators, aware of that video, and has it helped put together that timeline?
We are aware of that video, and it has helped. It gives us a time and space where we know that 2 of our victims were, and that helps us a ton, and we'll continue to follow up all leads that we can and continue to gather those.
Any indication of a party at the home that night?
This will be the last one, okay, I understand. Not that we know of, not at the home. We know that the other, let me get the names exactly right here. We know that Zaina and Ethan were at a different party on campus. But that timeline will still help us if other people know about that.
Thank you.
Rachel Sun, Northwest Public Broadcasting. I just want to clarify something you said earlier. Over the past couple of days, the information that we've been getting is there's not a threat to the public. And then earlier I heard you say you can't be sure that there is no threat. I just want to clarify what your stance is on that at this time.
So we still believe it's a targeted attack. But the reality is is there's still a person out there who committed 4 horrible, horrible crimes. So I think we got to go back to there is a threat out there still, possibly. We don't know. We don't believe it's going to be to anybody else. But we all have to be aware of our surroundings and make sure that we're watching out for each other.
Okay, and then one other follow-up. I know you said when the call came in, it was for an unconscious person, and also that was a stabbing. It seems, just from an outside perspective looking in, like that would be not the first thing a person calling in would think.
You're right. But the report that we got was that it was an unconscious individual. It wasn't until our officers arrived on scene, went in to do caregiving check on the individual who was unconscious, that we found the scene that we found.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Roberts with ABC News. Just to follow up on what she asked, so the other 2 roommates were there at the time of the attack?
All the information that we have from our investigation is that yes, they were.
Okay, but they were unhurt.
That is correct.
So is there any explanation as to why it took so long then for someone to call 911? You have surviving witnesses to an incident at 3 or 4 in the morning, and the 911 call didn't come until noon?
I don't think I ever said that they were witnesses. I said they were there.
An incident at 3 or 4 in the morning, and the 911 call didn't come until noon?
I don't think I ever said that they were witnesses. I said they were there. We don't know why that call came in at noon and not in the middle of the night. Would have we loved for that to have happened? Yes, but that's not how it took place. So that's why we're investigating everything still, to try to pull all the pieces together.
Were they one of the people, were they the 911 caller?
At this point in time, I'm not going to divulge who our 911 caller is, just because I want to keep the integrity of the investigation at this point, okay?
A question, are you able to tell whether the same weapon was used on all 4 victims?
That's why we're having the autopsies done. The autopsy will confirm that and hopefully collect some evidence for us, even from those. That's why you do the autopsies, is to try to be thorough and try to gather more. So we'll leave that would probably be something that would come out later.
Okay. News, Fox News Digital. Was there anything missing in the home, or were the purses still there? Any robbery attempt, anything like that?
Nothing that we have identified.
So there was nothing missing, according to the sheriff. There's nothing missing in the house. There was a period of time in the beginning of the case that we were told by the media that Brian Christopher Koberger had one of the girls' ID card with him, one of the identity cards. But that's a lie, because the chief said nothing was missing, clearly. So this wasn't a robbery, but they wouldn't know if a robbery happened if it was illegal stuff in the house. If there was money or drugs, example, or money laundering going on, the police wouldn't know if a robbery happened, because the people who would report the robbery are unfortunately deceased, and the other 2 are lying. The chief didn't even call them witnesses. He said they were just there. Pay attention to that.
I'm not saying that the murder weapon is back here, but primarily to make a determination if there is any physical evidence back here. Malta, this was a very gruesome murder scene, according to the medical examiner. According to the medical examiner, there was actually blood on the walls. And I can tell you, if we pan over, we're looking at the story of this home. And as you look, these are the 2 sections where the bodies were supposed to have been found, on the sturdy floor. Yeah. Now, there were 2 surviving individuals here that was on the 2nd floor. Oh. Now, I said, those individuals, 9 hours later, a call was put into law enforcement. Now, it is my understanding that before law enforcement arrived, and there's always a contamination of this scene. So all of these things are going on right now. But as we speak, law enforcement is here cordoning off this area. Why they're doing at the crime scene here is that they are broadening the crime scene. There's crime scene tape up around the home, and what we're now finding is that part of the parking lot itself is being broadened off as part of the crime scene. Now, earlier I had spoken about the area of the crime scene, that the leaves and everything back here were rather undisturbed. And I spoke about the fact that the kill